Let's stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people.
I need to add item number 3 to the business agenda regarding modifications and amendments to the budget. And that is it as far as what? And item number 5, open air market, also on the business agenda. I'm sorry, I missed pedestrian safety, item number 8 as well. I move to amend the business agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So there's our new Ulster County Legislator, Bishop Bowen. Do you have any announcements? Any info to share?
I do. Hi, guys. So we passed 2 resolutions pertaining to the village in New Paltz and the here, hold on, let me pull them up here. So resolution 220 was authorizing execution for the town of New Paltz for the American Rescue Plan funding. So that went through, and then 221 was for the village of New Paltz, and that went through as well. And that's for the sewer work that you guys need funding for. And then just a quick update that we have a Ulster County, we created a resolution declaring drag and other forms of gender expression protected under human rights law. And we're having a hearing at the legislature for that on June 13 is a public hearing. So if anyone wants to come out in support of that resolution, we welcome you.
Thanks, Trisha. After I got to, I saw you briefly 2 nights ago, and then I went and read it and whatnot. I added as a suggested edit to our Pride, LGBTQIA+ Pride resolution tonight to have be it further resolved, commending the Ulster County Legislature for introducing the Drag is Not a Crime Act, which would expand the existing human rights law to include gender expression as a protected category from discrimination, in hopes of that helping be able to say that your people are excited about this law.
Great. That's good news. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to report out. Any questions on that?
I just wanted to make it clear. So it's super exciting that the legislature went ahead and passed the contract that would enable the county to share some of its American Rescue Plan money through the grant program that they established for water and sewer. So many municipalities applied. The town and the village each applied separately. So we applied for up to $500,000 towards fixing water mains within our conveyance system in the village, and the town applied separately to address sewer district 6, which has been its own satellite sewer treatment facility that for years the town and the village have discussed handling it better, where you could take those approximately 12,000 gallons per day of sewer and include that in our New Paltz municipal system. So I think that's what the the plan for the town is looking to sort out. So, that would be a great win for our overall community to finally sort out that sewer District 6. So thanks for sharing the good news that both of those contracts will enable each of us to get this money towards both of these separate important projects.
I will keep you posted. It's going to take some time for the funding to actually be released, but I will keep you posted and do anything that I can to sort of move that along.
Yeah, we're super patient. We've been working on this for about 2 years.
Yeah, I realize that it's a slow process. Yeah.
Thanks, Tricia.
All right, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Trisha.
So announcements from our board.
I have a bunch, but someone else can go first.
I have my Family of New Paltz announcement reminder that families always looking for donations, specifically financial donations to help folks pay bills, and family works with different folks who need a little extra help in those departments. You can drop off cash or become a weekly donor or whatever fits into your budget. Family really needs recurring donations. A lot of folks who used to donate either perhaps moved away or just no longer donate anymore. And I know money's tight for everybody, but if you do have money to give, definitely consider Family of New Paltz. That's all I have.
Thanks, Michelle. Anyone else before Alex has wanted to
My list,
give
yeah.
everyone an opportunity to. Okay, take it away, Alex.
All right, so my favorite announcement. Okay, no, I can't say what my favorite is, but right now I'm most excited to say Sunday, June 4th, that's Pride. It's the parade and the festival per usual. Steps off at 12 noon from New Paltz Middle School. The festival is in Hasbrook Park soon thereafter. So excited. Hudson Valley Out Loud, our New Paltz's own Jimmy Prada has really stepped up and has a really good program for performances in the park all day long. And there's more vendors than last year set up, as well as, some old friends like Rainbow Acres doing the arts and crafts table for kids. I'll have a sunscreen station because that was needed last year and everything. So come one, come all. If you're a big group of people, please try to RSVP for the March so that we can make sure to organize it well. You can do that at outloudhudsonvalley.com/parade, or you can find me and let me know and I'll fill it out for you. So see you there. And then this Saturday, I'm really excited. There's a really, really free market taking place in Hasbrook Park from noon until 5 p.m. And I saw that there's also going to be free improv taking place there as one of the free parts of the market. Really loving all the collaborations that are going on, but it's a good chance, if you're getting rid of some old things, need some new things that were someone else's old things, to keep all that stuff out of, the waste stream. Just do plan to take home anything that you brought with you that does not get taken. And then, Narcan and other harm reduction services are available to anyone anywhere in Ulster County, thanks to Ellenville Regional's Project Rescue Program. And so text ERH Rescue to 2100, and they can hook you up with Narcan, other harm reduction supplies like test kits, snort kits, and sex kits. Narcan trainings are always available online through our community's opioid prevention program. So that's opioidpreventionnp.org. And the Never Use Alone hotline is a resource that's nationally available. Save the number, could save a life, 800-484-3731. And the free food fridge is right outside this building, Village Hall, 25 Platic Hill Avenue. And it's available 7 days a week, all the time. To find out details of how you can volunteer, because volunteers are needed, or guidelines for donating, go to millionsofbutterflies.org/free-food-fridge.
Thank you, Alex. Next on our agenda, we're going to invite Janelle to come up to the table and provide us, yes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much for adding me to the agenda tonight. I've been your Climate Smart volunteer for, it's over 5 years. And I'm proud of the accomplishments that our Climate Smart Task Force has led. The Village of New Paltz attained bronze certification in March of 2020 by doing actions that totaled amount exceeding what was required. I'm stepping down as coordinator as of June 1st for a variety of reasons, both personal mostly and programmatic, but I really wanted to see New Paltz continue down the path of Climate Smart Community certification and take it to the next level, silver. I feel a need to begin to state the obvious. We may be approaching or have already passed various tipping points to the climate system due to climate change, which will significantly lead to potentially irreversible changes to the Earth's climate. And from our own vulnerability assessment here in New Paltz, we learned that by the end of the century, New Paltz could experience 7 times more extreme heat days. The number of extreme precipitation events are projected to nearly double by the year 2100. Within 20 years, New Paltz's summer days will routinely reach 100 degrees. New Paltz may experience 5 times the number of heat waves by the end of the century. The number of extreme precipitation events could nearly double by 2100, another way of saying that earlier statistic. And New Paltz's freezing days could decrease by 50% by the end of the century. As a cross-country skier, that makes me sad. The impacts of climate crisis are far-reaching and affect a wide range of sectors, from public health to equity to national security. As such, I would argue it's important to consider climate change in all decision-making processes to some extent, whether it be in policymaking, resource allocation, or individual behavior. Ignoring the impacts of climate change will lead to severe consequences for future generations, as I know you all know. That said, I have so much gratitude for our very active task force of mostly community volunteers, some of which have come tonight. And we meet almost every single month for the past 5 years, and even through a pandemic without any pause. Thank you to Aurel Fair, Jim O'Dowd, to Mark Varian, who is also on the Gardner Climate Smart Task Force, Izzy DeFino, she is our newest member of the task force and works on social media, which is a huge help. Joe Londa, who has really taken on some big projects, including revamping of the community greenhouse gas inventory because it wasn't accepted by the review board in the first go around, and also has led the committee to do a draft battery energy storage law. And finally, Amanda Gatto. Amanda is an unsung hero in my book, as she did so much behind the scenes as our project manager, she kept the DEC grant online. It was, and when I first became coordinator, it was about to go back to the state. While it's difficult to do grant writing and get funded, most people don't realize the huge job it is just to administer a grant. Thank you for all that Amanda did. Thank you to the village board member, Alex Wojcik, who attended whenever you could. And you were always willing to do a deep dive and find answers to our questions that we had on the task force regarding board actions. That was really helpful. Julie Seifert Lillis is also our town of New Paltz liaison. I'm also grateful to Lynn Cherry and Liz Elkin, Megan Wolf, who's now working for Beyond Plastics, for being what I would call members at large, as they've always been willing to lend their support for specific projects. What we've done so far, obviously the active task force, which is a required action, the greenhouse gas inventory, both for the municipality, the village and the town, the natural resource inventory, which we've been told is really an exemplary case of an NRI, and I hope that it's one that you're using. The flood mapping report that was created by Woodwell Research out of Woods Hole. And I will say, reminder that that was a freebie that they did for us that would have cost many thousands of dollars. And they selected New Paltz as one of 3 municipalities in the country to do that project with. And I think they picked us because they saw us actively doing these kinds of projects. The Climate Smart Tiffin project, which actually has been emulated around the Hudson Valley. I'm really happy to see that expand because it saves resources and prevents from more takeout containers going into solid waste. The community greenhouse gas inventory, as I mentioned before, was updated by Joe Londa and really showed what's the biggie in the room: transportation. The community outreach has been very successful with our monthly Climate Smart Solutions meetups and a monthly Climate Smart book club. We have a monthly comprehensive 6-page Climate Smart newsletter, which I have to say sometimes it's been hard to keep it down to 6 pages because we're usually doing a lot. We have had community engagement project last summer that was quite deep through PACE, and that will serve as the base for our community climate action plan. So while I think it's useful to set the stage for my conversation with you tonight by telling you what we've done so far, I'm more interested in sharing with you my suggestions to facilitate the transition to a new coordinator and to continue the path towards silver certification and the further reduction of New Paltz greenhouse gas emissions. First of all, the task force needs to be comprised of municipal employees and elected officials, as well as community volunteers. It is not enough to simply have community volunteers. We were given a sort of probationary credit for this action in the first round when we were certified bronze, but I don't think that they're going to be so generous in the next review if we haven't improved the task force makeup. To quote from the review board, they said the October 2018 list of members clearly shows representation from the broader community. Representation from the village government is less clear. Representation from both sectors is a requirement for this action. And it goes on to say that they allowed it because I am on the bicycle pedestrian committee and Amanda was on the environmental conservation board. So they kind of let it pass. But now I'm not going to be officially on the task force, nor is Amanda. So that kind of won't count. So we'll really need to show evidence in like the minutes and the attendance that there is active participation by the village board or employees of. As I said before, Alex, your participation on the task force, when you've been able to be there, is really super helpful. And it would be awesome if maybe even on months that you can't attend, if maybe there could be a substitution. And we very much welcome anyone, either from this board of trustees or a municipal employee. Like, it might be really great to highlight one particular department and then really drill in that month on a particular action that that department has something to do with, like say transportation. So the climate smart actions that are possible cross over, as I said, to many departments. And I don't think that there's many, I don't think a lot of municipal employees really know in detail what climate smart is and why it's important or what they can do to lead it. I regret that I didn't find a better vehicle myself to communicate that information, but I really think it should be a community effort, not just the work of the task force. I would recommend that as a board, you communicate to all the departments, the employees, that climate smart is the lens in which to plan and make decisions. The climate smart actions and how to document them really should be known by all. In short, there needs to be kind of more of an investment that is deep and real. And so that we are not just doing these actions to get points, we're trying to do our part to limit our impact on the climate crisis and prepare for the inevitable effects of the climate crisis on our community. And I would say that many of the actions, I think, actually improve quality of life. If you think about things like planting trees and preserving green spaces. Those are all things that improve quality of life. Currently, we have one task force and one coordinator serving both the town and the village of New Paltz. I remind you of this because sometimes people forget that we have to simultaneously track two entirely different sets of actions and record them in the portal. So it's very helpful that if there's anything that the village does that you think might be guided by a climate smart action, that really be actively communicated to us and kind of find out, well, what documentation would you need to put that in? Because I think sometimes things miss our radar, and it would
Yeah,
be,
I can think of
Yeah.
numerous things
Right.
that I find it a little curious that you don't have them on your list.
precisely, yeah. And it wasn't a complete list, and there might be ones like, oh yeah, I got that one, but yeah, I fear that there are others, and
Yeah.
and
Like real needle movers in terms of like engaging New York Power Authority,
I was just going to reference that as a matter of fact. Absolutely.
fire station.
Yes.
RFPs for solar on the fire station, new energy efficient trucks.
Yes.
Just off the top of my head.
Right, right.
Kind of like nearly everything we do, we use a climate solutions lens.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm lost. I was going to say that we have facilitated, I think it's around 44 climate smart solutions meetups, and there are a couple that for example that you attended related to the we talked about the firehouse and the changes with the police station conversion, and that was an awesome meetup because it gave a vision to other communities what they could do. It would also be great to see more participation by community members in the other meetups. It turned out that because with the COVID, we ended up doing all our meetups online, and we would get people from sometimes even other countries joining us. But I felt like a lot of times we didn't really have as much New Paltzers involved that we would like. Part of the reason that New York chose to create climate smart communities was to have municipalities lead the community by its example. And you just quoted some examples there. And I referenced it here in my write-up, and that is the fire station. And thank you, Tim, and the rest of the board for holding out to do that build right. Because I think there was a point in time where you had funds to do it in a way that wouldn't have been nearly as good as it is. And it's really a shining light of what can be done.
We rejected the initial bids, and we were told that we were absolutely crazy to do that, but we did it anyways.
And that was
then
the right thing to
we
do.
built a much more energy efficient fire station.
Exactly. And what I hope can happen, and I understand there's a feasibility study being done, is to add the solar that it was built for, both hopefully on the roof and hopefully on the parking lot as well. That would be awesome and very visible to the community.
Yeah, we're waiting for that RFP as we speak.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's been in play for some
That's
time.
exciting. And the new trail, the bike path will go right past it there too. It'll be very visible. So where do we go from here? Next, I think the village needs to actively select next actions that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In short, you really need a climate action plan. Here are some actions, some not expensive, some are, but all have impact. A complete streets policy. Circling back to that, we were told it's a great idea, come back when you created one. Well, attendance at those meetings was COVID, but it quickly dwindled to just 3 of us, Amanda, a SUNY student, and myself. And it was no longer a joint process. Perhaps one of us could have just written the policy and asked for its passage, but there would have been no investment or awareness and change where the policy actually has impact. So I would like to have that revisited. And along those lines, a vehicle fleet inventory, that should be pretty straightforward and does not cost money per se, other than the time to put together the inventory. And then from there, a policy to actually set goals for how you're going to, say, improve the fleet efficiency. A right size policy, again, it's passing a policy. Recycling and composting. I wonder if there is a grant that we could write to find a way to fund curbside pickup of compost. There seems to
County's
be,
working on that.
county is working on that. That would be spectacular, because as we know, methane from people putting food waste in the garbage is really an issue. Passage of an idling law, that's another simple one. Anything to do with reducing vehicle miles traveled, that's the elephant in the living room. Farmers market support, I think more overt support to make it a more vibrant market that really supports local farmers. In the last few farmers markets that I went to, there was really only one farmer. And I think that is one of the point gaining actions you can take. I already mentioned the solar panels. Oh, and I missed something. I was delighted to hear, if I understand right, that the new CCA contract at the village is 100% renewable by default. That's the default, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's great.
That allows us to get points with New York State, right?
Yes,
So there's a case to be made that you could do 50%
correct.
renewables, and you probably would end up with a significant amount more than that if you're purchasing renewables outside of New York State, but then you wouldn't be able to get the credits with New York State to receive some of
Right.
these grant awards.
Yeah, so I was glad of that decision. And I really give credit to some of the task force members and community people that were really push CCA, in its early days, because that really, as you
We
said,
actually got an
moves the needle.
award yesterday in
Really?
Poughkeepsie with the city of Poughkeepsie mayor, because we've been
Really?
leading this charge for years.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
We're a very rare community to have worked on this for
Yeah.
as long as we have. And,
Yeah,
And
it's
we're kind of
really
recognized
great.
statewide for doing this work.
Fantastic. So now for the moment, I've been excited to share tonight. Not only have we successfully recruited a new climate smart coordinator, but we've also added a person to our task force. As I'm stepping down June 1st, I admit to being concerned that another coordinator might not be found for a while, and it gives me great relief to have such a competent person step up to take on this challenging role. I would like to introduce Dr. Yvonne Posey. She is a retired physician and who moved to here from Michigan several years ago. She's done a lot in her own home to make it more climate smart. And she's been looking for an opportunity to become an active member of our community. And I'm so glad she found us. Yvonne was a chemical pathologist who ran 2 labs. And therefore, I think project management is very much in your skill set. She has given multiple lectures over more than 25 years on environmental pathology to colleagues and medical students. Both myself and members of the Climate Smart Task Force have met with Yvonne and feel fully confident in our recommendation of Dr. Posey. Am I pronouncing your name right? I was using your first name so freely that I wasn't sure I was. So we would like to recommend her as your new Climate Smart coordinator.
Wow, that
Thank
sounds
you so
super
much.
exciting.
I'm honored to be selected. And I applied for it because I got an email, but also I was really impressed when I first moved here, which has been 2 years now, with the CCA. I mean, that was exciting for me to see that. So I knew I was moving into the right community, and I wanted to be actively part of the community. And this is one way I think that I can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're figuring out a lot as we go with the CCA. From what I understand, the litigation that we're involved in, because we've been challenging the former energy supply company that broke the contract with New Paltz. Seems like the feeling is that the Public Service Commission actually thinks that they've come to an understanding of what may have gone on. So very interesting inside baseball kind of stuff that we work on a daily basis. Yeah, there's a lot going on with the CCA programs, and we actually have that on our agenda tonight to support a change within New York State so that CCA administrators could be held more accountable via law as opposed to just policy through the Public Service Commission. So we'll see if the state legislature goes for that. But that's something that we've been actively lobbying in support of. But yeah, I mean, we have a long list of stuff that we've been doing, and maybe we could have just compared notes more regularly. Something that's really important to me, because I spent the morning talking with our sewer plant operators, is how we manage methane down at the sewer plant.
Yes.
It's a project and program that we worked on with SUNY engineering students. Because when I first came into office, actually, our methane was just being released into the air because the ability to burn the methane had failed. So we had to update that system. And then we've been exploring the possibility of, well, how could we use the methane, even though it's not a substantial amount? It's not like you could do anything too terrific with the methane, but just something, even if it was just like, run some other mechanical within the plant, that might make sense. But at least we're burning it as opposed to just releasing it, because it is, such an impactful greenhouse gas emission.
Well, that's one of the things I'm going to start doing, is taking a deeper dive into what is already out there, and see how we can coordinate activities and apply for grants to start with new projects or whatever is needed.
Probably one of our favorite too, and we've been leading the charge as the village, and this is a townwide initiative, but is our single hauler initiative. That's where we end up with fewer trash trucks on the road, which helps with congestion and traffic and environmental impacts and safety. But we just had our second term, which we're anticipating will start shortly. Second 5-year term. Some of the more boring stuff doesn't attract as much attention.
Don't call it boring. The task force,
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like some of my favorite meetings are the Climate Smart Task Force, but I guess we like the nitty gritty stuff that saves the world.
And we do have people that have the bandwidth to take it on, Jolanda's incredible with spreadsheets and really drilling down on very scientific things. So
Yeah, I think
that's
the
a huge
community's
help.
lucky to have Joe as excited as he is
Yeah.
to work on these things.
Exactly. And now he is also leading a project with, I think it's 11 high school students, to help them assess the viability of having electric school buses in their school district.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fantastic project, because it also inspires youth too, to get into this kind of work. And speaking of youth, I also want to tell you that we have added another task force member. His name is Dylan Moscoso. He couldn't be here tonight, but he is our newest Climate Smart Task Force member, as we are recommending him. And he will be graduating from SUNY New Paltz shortly. And he's majored in environmental sciences and public relations, interested in journalism. So we're really excited that he's interested in serving on the task force as well, and has already spoken about several projects that he would like to actively be involved with.
Janelle, can you explain what's the difference between the Climate Task Force and the Climate Action Coalition?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question to ask, because a lot of people are confused in the community. The Climate Action Coalition is a 501c3. It's more of an activist group, whereas the Climate Smart Task Force is very specifically oriented towards the New York State Climate Smart Communities program. Sometimes, I mean, there's certainly a lot of, for example, Jim and I are both on the CAC and the Climate Smart Task Force. And I wouldn't have even known about Climate Smart Communities if it wasn't for the CAC, because that's how I first learned of it. So there's certainly common energy in both groups, but the focus with Climate Smart Task Force is singularly, for helping the two municipalities become certified the next level.
So maybe you or Jim know the answer to this. So has New Paltz, whether it's the town or the village, ever had representation on the county's Environmental Management Council?
Not that I know of, no.
Right. So Jen Metzger had contacted us recently and said that we should make a point to have representation on that county council.
Are you talking about a different council than because there's a countywide climate smart task, no, different.
No, it's Environmental Management Council, and I didn't even know it,
Yeah,
right?
no, I
Yeah.
didn't know about it either.
Too many initialisms.
It's a challenge, but I thank you very much for your time tonight. I'm so glad that you could meet Dr. Posey. And I really believe that under this new leadership, you're going to get to silver. I'm very confident in that. Yeah.
I think
So-
we're close. I feel like we're
Yeah.
closer than
I feel like
it
if it was all
seems.
documented,
Yeah.
there's definitely things that we're missing.
And Autumn has taken an interest in making sure that we're doing a better job documenting, because so much of this stuff is happening, it's just like my off the top of the head list. And like clearly we can do a better job of making sure that it's all being recorded and presented
Yeah,
properly. Because I think we're doing a lot of stuff that maybe people aren't aware of.
I think that's
Yeah.
completely true.
You're doing good stuff. Too. Very good.
And I hope when we have a reorg that I'll keep being the point person I love. And if not, I'll still show up.
But maybe you guys can talk amongst CAC members and task force members about finding someone who would be interested in serving as the representative on the Environmental Management Council, the EMC from the UC, being silly. But that seems like that's a spot that we need to populate with someone.
What day of the week or day of the
No
month?
idea.
And the contact would be Jen Metzger's office?
Well, contact us because we would have to
Okay.
appoint that person.
Got it. Yeah, we can bring that up at the CAC as well.
The last Wednesday of every month at 6:30. And they meet at the Restorative Justice Center on Broadway in Kingston.
Okay, thank
So
you.
does that conflict with this meeting?
No, it's the last because we're the second and fourth.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would. But that's okay. That's why the task force has liaisons. And I always let you know when it's like, oh my God, I accidentally booked myself for 5 meetings at the same time and I'm on the side of the road. I always let the task force know when that's the case. Otherwise I'm there. So you don't have to worry about coming to our meetings except when there's, big presentations and stuff.
And Jen did mention that it's supposed to be a CAC member. I don't know
Huh.
why.
Well, yeah,
But the Climate Action Coalition is an activist group.
yeah, I think CAC is sometimes what we have an ENCB. And I think
Mhm.
in some communities, that's called the CAC.
Right, okay.
Environmental Policy Board in
And we
the
have
town.
an EPB.
No, well, at
We have an
the
EPB.
town level is the Environmental Conservation Board. At the village level, it's Environmental Policy Board.
Yeah.
I think in some municipalities, that's called the CAC.
That's gonna be right.
You know what? That actually tracks.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think what's curious is that both of those have different mandates too. I feel like one is really about, like the policy board is more about like broader policy, and the ENCB is really their mandate, I think, is to look at applicants before the planning board
That's-
through an environmental
That's
lens.
one of the things, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I reassured Yvonne that I'm not moving away. I'm here as a guide on the side. And I would be more than happy to help in this transition over time. Thank you very much.
Just
Thank you.
One
Yep.
thing while we're on the subject of climate, excuse me. Ulster County's problem area survey, do you know anything about that? It's a hazard mitigation plan.
Oh, yeah.
That survey is reaching out to all community members in the county to find problem spots where there's flooding or erosion or some other catastrophe happening nearby as a result of climate.
Yeah,
And that survey is due this Friday, I believe, but you can find information at the Ulster County website. It's called the Ulster County Problem Area Survey Hazard Mitigation Plan.
It's on the village website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we're encouraging anyone to complete the survey.
I would certainly point them to the flood mapping
That's-
that was done, because that was really eye-opening to me. I didn't realize that the FEMA flood maps, really don't take into fact the whole picture, both fluvial and pluvial flooding is what was shown on that flood mapping tool. So that short little video, it's only 30 seconds, but it shows over time. It's like, whoa, that's a lot of acreage that's potentially covered in water. So thank you for pointing that out,
I
Bill.
recommend if you do it on a laptop or computers.
I will. Yeah, I want to try to do that on the phone.
Could you share that with the whole task force? If not, I could tonight.
Share the
Just-
link to the,
Encourage them to do the survey.
Yeah, let's get a couple more survey answers in.
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
I kept, that's been on my to-do list and then I haven't done it and now I'm looking at you. I'm sorry. And you're like, I'm leaving. I'm like, here's one more thing, please. Thank you.
First I'll find it and I'll share it. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. You're all the best.
We're looking forward to doing more good work with you guys.
Okay, so the next item is our CCA. Are we supposed to take action or is this more of an announcement? Autumn? Okay, so we're just going to highlight that the opt-out period is through June 9th. We're encouraging people to just stay in the program because that does not require paperwork. And this way we can end up having a fighting chance of addressing our climate crisis.
A couple of people, I was walking around knocking on doors yesterday and a couple of people had questions about this, who have ESCOs. And so I told them, if you have an ESCO, you do have an extra step. You have to, call your own ESCO and kind of figure out what the deal is, but you can always get into our CCA at any point. There's no deadline for that.
And the feedback that I've gotten from the people who are answering the phones at Hudson Valley Community Power is that they are getting some inquiries from folks enrolled in ESCOs so that they can switch over and participate in the CCA. So they feel like that communication is happening pretty seamlessly, easier than the previous two rounds.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then I move that we go ahead as a board and support adding our village's name to this letter regarding the proposed State and Local Clean Energy Partnership Act.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I move to adopt the budget mods. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 4 is related to the Community Development Block Grant. This is item number A or item letter A. It's a resolution committing that we contribute $47,000 to our project that we will be applying for grant assistance.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item B, a letter authorizing the mayor to address the Office of Housing and Community Renewal. This is just related to this same grant application. Someone want to second it? All in favor?
Aye.
And next item is this grant app we'd be determining it to be a type 2 activity. So this is just doing that seeker paperwork now. Someone want to second it? All in favor? Aye. And the next item is also related to this grant app. This is designating the mayor's office as the certifying officer for our consent order compliance sewer remediation per the DEC and the engineering planning grant project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And E, this is the resolution regarding the DEC engineering planning grant and our commitment to provide assistance to low and moderate income persons to connect to the village's sanitary system. This is documentation that will be included in our grant application. All in favor?
Aye.
And this will also be included in the grant application. So the grantors, they like to see all of these I's dotted in advance. That's why we're doing them all this evening. And this is just authorizing that we're advertising to seek the assistance from an engineering firm for this project. Someone want to second that? All in favor?
Aye.
And the next item is our open air market. So, this is an initiative that we've worked on for many years at this point, because, as Janelle highlighted, this is important for communities. We want to make sure that local farms have opportunities to sell their goods, and artists. But it's sometimes pretty challenging to administer and organize open air markets. And we've been trying to push that along. I wish it was as easy as it's like, yeah, let's get a bunch of farms to just hang out in the parking lot and sell stuff, but it's a lot of work. And it does not happen without folks behind the scenes making it happen. So someone want to kind of summarize what's been going on based on our sidebar conversations on this topic?
Yeah, so our open air market, like Tim said, we've had it for years now. I was assistant to the mayor when we started it up, and was on Church Street. And the idea was, bringing all these different farm sources and artists and, organizations sometimes and musicians and sometimes to a market space. And it is an important benchmark. And, having a coordinator, from year to year, we just didn't really have a clear coordinator going into this season. And so there's all this infrastructure set up. People have been, contacting the old email or the form on the website and stuff. And we just need someone to step up. So it seems like we have a couple people kind of stepping up all together, like Ariana, is helping kind of behind the scenes. So is a local farmer who I guess had helped run it last year as well. Basically just trying to there was a board that was active in the past and trying to get that up and running again, because it is its own separate thing. It's not something that the village board necessarily runs. We just want to make sure it happens and try to give it the tools.
Right. The village does not get compensated for running an open air market. If anything, we pay because we negotiated in our lease agreement with Kempner, who owns the post office property, including the parking lot in the front. We pay to have access to that parking lot where there are metered spots, as well as this area that in the lease is defined as a space to be used for things like open air markets.
Exactly.
We waived the vendor peddlers fee for it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it looks like we're at the stage of, getting it permitted in terms of the vendor and peddlers fee, and improving the dates from, June through the end of October on Sundays from 10 to 2. And that'll, once we make that vote, then it'll be able to kind of move on to like really rebuilding the central leadership and collecting all the interest and getting it going, hopefully in the next couple weeks. So
All right, so I move that we waive the vendor and peddler's fee. All in favor?
hi.
And next item, I'll let you take it, Alex.
Awesome. So I'm excited because last year we did our Pride resolution at the very end of the month. So we're going to set the tone at the end of May now. So this is the resolution of the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees memorializing June 2023 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. Whereas in June of 1969, patrons and supporters of the Stonewall Inn in New York City staged an uprising to resist the police harassment and persecution to which LGBTQIA+ Americans were commonly subjected, marking the beginning of a movement to outlaw discriminatory laws and practices against LGBTQIA+ Americans, and that LGBTQIA+ people continue to suffer discrimination, hostility, and exclusion at almost every level of society, including in areas of housing, education, employment, healthcare, family law, immigration, and marriage equality. And whereas LGBTQIA+ Pride Month has been celebrated each year since in the month of June to honor the commitment of the LGBTQIA+ pioneers who fought for civil rights in the 1969 Stonewall riots in Manhattan, a critical tipping point historically for the LGBTQIA+ community in the United States. And during this month, we celebrate the progress we have made in creating a community more inclusive and accepting of LGBTQIA+ people. And whereas throughout much of the history of the United States, same-sex relationships were criminalized in many states, and many LGBTQIA+ people in the United States were forced to hide their LGBTQ+ identities while living in secrecy and fear. And whereas on June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in Obergefell versus Hodges, and I put the number of the case there in the resolution, that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry, and acknowledge that, quote, no union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. And whereas the Village of New Paltz made history in Peace Park on February 27th, 2004, as the location of the first same-sex marriages in the country outside of San Francisco under former Mayor Jason West, who was subsequently arrested, whose efforts led to widespread national public attention, resulting in greater acceptance and enacted laws granting same-sex marriages. And whereas New Paltz has been hosting the annual Hudson Valley Pride March and Festival in June for going on 2 decades, always the first Sunday in June. And in continuation of this tradition, the Village of New Paltz has served as a leader in the growing Hudson Valley Pride Coalition, which has planned the March and Festival held in our community last year and the last 2 years, and this year on Sunday, June 4th. And whereas LGBTQIA+ people in the United States face disparities in employment, healthcare, education, housing, many other areas central to the pursuit of happiness in the United States. And whereas many states have no explicit ban on discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in the workplace, housing, or public accommodations, and many states have no explicit ban on discrimination against LGBTQIA+ individuals in education. And whereas LGBTQIA+ people, LGBTQIA+ youth especially, are at increased risk of suicide, homelessness, and being the targets of bullying and violence. And whereas the LGBTQIA+ community has faced discrimination, inequality, and violence throughout the history of the United States. And whereas LGBTQIA+ people in the United States, in particular transgender individuals, face a disproportionately high risk of becoming victims of violent hate crimes and higher likelihood of being homicide victims. And whereas in 2009, President Barack Obama signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And I include the division of the law in the resolution for people to find it, into law to protect all people in the United States from crimes motivated by the actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity of an individual. And whereas despite being marginalized throughout the history of the United States, LGBTQIA+ people in the United States continue to celebrate their identities, love, and contributions to the United States in various expressions of pride. And whereas the inclusion of LGBTQIA+ people in the United States continues to expand every day, and LGBTQIA+ people and their allies in the United States remain determined to pursue equality, respect, and inclusion for all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. And therefore, be it resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees declares June 2023 LGBTQIA+ Pride Month and memorializes it as such in this resolution as a symbol that we stand as allies in an intersectional LGBTQIA+ movement that continues to struggle with ongoing issues of racial and economic justices and challenges to civil and human rights. And be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees stands committed and united to help break down the walls of fear and prejudice and will work to build a bridge to understanding and acceptance until all LGBTQIA+ people are afforded the same rights and responsibilities as all Americans. And be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees hereby calls upon residents, employers, public officials, and all community members to work together to promote equal rights for all, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, and does further encourage all to observe the month of June with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities that celebrate our diversity and recognize LGBTQ+ Americans whose many and varied contributions have enriched our lives. And this is my suggested addition. Be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees commends the Ulster County Legislature for introducing the Drag is Not a Crime Act, which would expand the existing human rights law to include gender expression as a protected category from discrimination, and be resolved that the village clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to our US senators, state assembly members, county reps, and everyone else. And so I move that we adopt this with that added paragraph. All in favor?
Thank you, Alex, for making sure we included that resolution at the beginning of June, before June started.
That way we can share it out, and celebrate accordingly.
Next item, or do we have to vote on the resolution? We did not.
We just did. We're all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you call the question?
I did. I already thought I did. We'll look at the tape.
Okay, so the next item is, we've been trying to figure out what to do with the new parking spots in front of the Zero Place building. We had talked about using the mobile phone app for parking enforcement. So is that the plan? That's how it will be set up?
Yes, I added those into the chart for whenever they are approved into the parking chart. Whether or not you additionally add street meters, going out meters at that location, I don't know if that's been discussed or not, but.
So it's in the works to include.
Structurally, yes, those 7 parking spots in front of Zero Place have been added to our overall zoning, to our zone list for the parking app.
Is there a possibility of hitting pause on those 7 spots while we wait for the rest of that corridor to be built out?
They have to designate the spaces in the setup to generate the amount of signage needed. So I've made the request to include those 7 spots in advance of their being authorized while it's being set up. Does that make sense?
Okay. And then we have a change to our code. This was basically just an oversight, right, Michelle?
Well, the handicap spot that we deemed to be in front of 87 Main turned out to be part of the loading zone in front of Manny's. So it could not become handicap spot. And so Heather and Blue identified that we could make it be 81 Main Street, which is in front of Dragon's Realm. So that's.
So make that spot a handicap
Handicap.
spot.
Mhm.
That's great. So that's what this draft law is. Do we need to schedule a public hearing for that?
All of the parking spot new additions are code, so you do need to schedule a public hearing for both the handicap change and whatever additional parking gets added. So yes, we need to schedule a public hearing.
Oh, that's if we're going, so that's the letter C on this agenda item, discussion about reimagining Plattekill Avenue. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Yeah, hold on, I'm just pulling it up. Bill and I spent some time on Plattekill and we identified, some of these might be, dream things. Some of these might be doable. So we wanted to open up the conversation. And the reason is because the firehouse has moved, so it opens up Plattekill Avenue for us to really look at where we can put new spots and also make it safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and cars, because it is a very wide road. And just being there for a short amount of time, and we saw just so many cars exceeding the speed limit and a lot of cars idling in front of Starbucks. So how can we make this safer and just an overall better street, especially as we come into having more folks in our community visiting and living. So one of the ideas is to create a bump out in front of Starbucks on Plattekill Avenue side. It's where Bill mentioned it's important to note that this is where trucks are unloading. So we need to keep some space for that unloading area, but I would love to create a bump out similar to what is seen in front of P&G's. So I put photos of that in there. I'm assuming that bump out in front of P&G's was created so people do not park in front of P&G's. There's nowhere to park, and also to keep the parking spaces in front of it safer in that crosswalk. So I'd love to see that in that section. I'm just see. I don't know. Do we want to talk about each of these as we go, or should I
Each of
just
these? With-
lay it all out? Yeah, there's like set 8 different discussion points.
Well, I don't think we should mix bump outs with parking,
Okay.
because bump outs are going to should be included in our letter to the regional traffic engineer at the DOT.
Yeah.
Because we can't do bump outs,
Yeah.
Can
So.
you bump out on Plattekill?
not at that intersection. It's a DOT intersection.
So we'll pull it out, but I'll go through everything. So one of the things I noticed was Runa's entrance, Runa Bistro, the restaurant, is really unsafe. We don't even have the 5 feet from driveway rule, that code that we have there. And it makes it extremely dangerous to pull out of Runa because of the 2 parking spots that are right outside the driveway. So I thought perhaps we could remove one spot, the spot if you're facing Runa on the right, and potentially put bicycle parking there to help ensure that cars do not block that entrance and make it unsafe. We could put also 4 to 5 parking metered spots in front of the Vanderlyn, which is the building, the home next to Runa, the east side of Plattekill. Continuing up, we could put 2 more metered spots in front of 20 Plattekill, and potentially 2 more in front of 26 and 28 Plattekill. So that's all
Those are
East-
residential properties. though.
yeah. So do we want to put metered parking spaces there? Do we want to allow parking there?
Because I've had conversations with those property owners because they're interested in some sort of parking enforcement. And I'm like, well, explain to me what you think would make sense. Because they like to park in the street sometimes, or their guests will park in the street sometimes. And I don't think we have any metered spots in front of other residential properties
That's a good point.
Unless their residence is above the business, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but those are mixed use.
Yeah.
What about the van in front of the Vanderlyn? Is that, because there's some parking in front, like half of it, and then
Yep.
could we finish, put a few more spots there and then leave? I don't know. Does that,
Well, maybe it's not just about parking metered spots. Maybe it's about some sort of regulation for parking on Plattekill from a certain point south on that side of the street, and the same sort of treatment on the opposite side of the street.
Having some sort of order to parking.
Yeah,
Would
parking.
certainly help with, I feel like sometimes it just gets, because it's so wide, you know, like it gets chaotic because it's like where you coast your bike down or your skateboard down and cars are going everywhere. And when there's parking, it slows people down.
Yeah, we discussed the width of this area here, which was designed so fire apparatus could get in and out easily. And no parking obviously was for, firefighters to be able to get into the building quickly. There's a lot of real estate there. There's a lot of issues I feel in terms of pedestrian safety, bicycle safety. Because of the width, you often see people, going at a rapid pace from the corner on down. We thought maybe as an initial effort to perhaps double stripe it from the intersection down to Main Street, so that at least there's a sense that you have to be on one side of the road, not on the opposite side of the road, because I've often seen people who are going into the oncoming lane and then making a slight, maybe I don't go all that way. So
That's an interesting idea, just striping it, putting a yellow line down the middle and then putting like fog lines on the edges. Because that, I think, has helped Main Street a great deal.
yeah,
But that's a conversation I think we should have with Blue and Nick and DPW staff. And even parking enforcement staff to get their opinion on what would work well.
yeah. The regulation, I know on Prospect Street, you can only park on one side or the other. You have to leave you can leave overnight, but you have to leave it, move it by 8 a.m. the next morning. That kind of regulation for that stretch would be, I think, welcome, so people can park, but they're not going to park the car for, indefinite period of time.
I have seen in various places, signs that say 2-hour parking, but there isn't a meter, for instance.
Yeah.
So like, we're not necessarily going over and chalking, each tire to enforce it, but it might, be a way for us to encourage people to not park in front of people's houses here all day, but be able to park.
Yeah, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. kind of
What,
regulation.
what's interesting is we haven't done chalking tires in a long time. There's actually this valve stem report. So that's the way you're supposed to do it. Like where the valve stem is on the tire, and then if it moves or doesn't move.
we do have parking in front of people's homes on North Front,
With meters, yeah.
meters parking.
Oh, true.
But it is,
It's a mix.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah,
mixed use.
it's a-
neighborhood.
I completely,
It's also a state highway.
yeah.
And I like the idea of the calming thing.
Yeah.
I think we need to have this conversation with Public Works, and
Yeah.
I would pull in our parking enforcement
Yeah.
folks. I would include Matt and Myra and get their opinions.
Sure.
Yeah, I wrote Sam 6, so the other one would be 5 spots on the opposite side going up. There's a potential. But yeah,
There's that weird curb cut
yeah,
there too. If that curb cut wasn't there, it'd be easier to include more spots.
There's another issue on the east side here, across from the firehouse, that there's a drainage sewer ditch that takes the runoff that, washes over Plattekill with rise and goes into that ditch and down into the catch basin. So I don't know. I've gotten out on that side. It could be a little tricky.
It's the area where the old and the new fire hydrant is.
Mm.
I mean, it could be, you could put a perforated pipe along that stretch that does feed into the catch basin, something like that, if you wanted to flatten out that area with gravel and whatnot.
Yeah, but when we wrote this, we actually left that section without any parking in that section because of that French drain.
Yeah, we gotta
Yeah.
include
No, you're absolutely
the
right.
other department, and this, they'll be doing some of this work, and they'll have good ideas about what
Absolutely.
we can do.
So do you want me to send this to?
Yeah, send it to Blue and Heather.
Mhm.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks for pushing that topic along. It's definitely something that we should address and get done, adding some of those parking spots to Plattekill. So under the subject water, we had a Catskill Aqueduct shutdown when the DEP was doing
Oh,
work.
the thing, sorry, 8, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, right, go ahead.
The other thing is, identifying these crosswalks that we have on Main Street, to make them safer. So the crosswalk at Plattekill that we were just talking about at P&G's, crosswalk at Grove, and the crosswalk at Oakwood. So Tim and I were talking today about to just write a simple letter to the DOT and ask them for solutions for these 3 specific crosswalks. So
And then I would probably lump in the possibility of a bump out at the 299 Plattekill intersection, you know, to improve
Yeah.
pedestrian safety.
Great.
And can you send an email to Gerald Charleston? He's the new regional traffic engineer for Region 8. He replaced Lee Zimmer. So just shoot him a note and say, per the village board, we're curious if you have any updated ideas on how pedestrian safety could be improved at these 4 locations.
Do we maintain the paint on those crosswalks, or is that DOT?
DOT, we just do the paint annually on our crosswalks
Right.
and our parking spots.
I just noticed that the one on Oakwood is getting quite faded, and you know, after a couple of years in plowing and traffic, it's just.
Yeah, you have to paint a lot more often than people imagine.
Yeah, that one is very faded. Like I've noticed a few times driving, like it's not visible all the time. And that makes me so nervous because I'm usually not driving.
That would be such a good spot for a pedestrian bump out, you know, as we've
Yeah.
gone over so many times. And when we walked Main Street with DOT officials and county planning officials only a few weeks ago, and we made a point to go to that intersection. So it's on their radar, but I think we should resend another note. And then under water, so there was an aqueduct shut down recently. I thank our staff for responding to the request from the DEP, so the DEP could do repair work on their shutdown that we buy expensive raw water from. And it created a little challenge in that this was, you know, right before probably one of our busiest times of the year, which is SUNY graduation, as well as the town was trying to fill up Moriello Pool. So we had to ask them to hit pause. Fortunately, they were able to wait and make sure that we had enough water so that the town could go ahead and fill Moriello Pool with enough time to get it filled by Memorial Day weekend. Seems like that's all working out.
Great.
and so we thank them for their patience and the, the pool staff, Bill Russell and, Town Highway and our DPW all work together to come up with a plan. But, it's one of those things when you're not having access to our regular amount of water, you have to be very careful. I simultaneously sent a note to the college asking them to pause on irrigating ball fields during that shutdown period. And then the shutdown ended up being a couple of days shorter than originally planned. So we got lucky that time. And we have this draft law. Did we open the public hearing? We did not. Okay, so then I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna move that we open the public hearing regarding a law to ensure the efficient and fair measurement of the use of water provided by the village to multiple users from the same source by requiring property owners to install master meters or pit meters when there's an increase in the number of buildings, businesses, or residential units on a property. This law will apply to all properties in commercial and residential zones where there are 3 or more buildings or businesses or 3 or more residential units using the same water connection. So this is similar to what we did with SUNY New Paltz, where we used to read 53 individual building meters, and then we required them to put in pit meters where the water enters the campus property. So it's a much better way of doing things because it's fewer meters to read, but then more importantly, it probably makes the risk of a leak detectable sooner, and then also the property owner in that case would be the college is then super motivated to fix those leaks because it's being metered, and so it's just a much better way of doing things. So I think it should apply to, for instance, large apartment buildings, and large apartment buildings might still have individual meters to figure out what different units are using as far as water, and to make sure that individual units don't have running toilets, etc. But at least as far as what's fair and reasonable for all the ratepayers in the system, this way someone else is not paying for leaking water on a different property. I think it's just a better, more equitable way of managing how water is resourced. So second and opening, and we'll keep it open. We reached out to Lori at Pulp to see if their team had any thoughts on this proposed law, and maybe the community will chime in and offer their feedback. Okay, so that takes care of 9B, and then the next item is regarding zoning. So we have a draft law to amend Schedule A, that's the use schedule, and Schedule B, that's the density control schedule. I move that we establish lead agency status and to declare the amendment to the Schedule B density schedule a type control schedule, a type 1 under seeker. A notice of intent will be sent to all involved interested agencies. And then we also need to schedule a public hearing for amendments to Schedule A and Schedule B on June 14th.
I'll second your motion about lead agency and declaring a type 1.
Okay, let's move that. Any questions or all in favor?
Aye.
And then someone want to second my motion to schedule a public hearing on June 14th?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then item 11 is housekeeping. So we've had the short-term rental law for some time. There was a typo in our fee schedule, and we need the fee schedule to reference Article 4, Section 129-26. And we have to discuss dollar amount for someone who is in violation of the short-term rental law.
Now it's what, $1,000 a day, something like that.
I think the issue is that we discussed this in the past and it just never made its way
I see.
into schedules.
Okay.
Or if we discussed it in the past, it was referencing the wrong section of code. But do we know how much the fee that we discussed in the past was?
I thought I saw somewhere it was $1,000 a day,
That was for not having signed up. to be in the
not being
registry.
registered, right?
Oh, well, that's different, right? I mean, we could have it be exactly that same number.
Okay.
I mean, making it the same number.
Which one's never been in 6 months, so. You know, doing it. Oh, because
Or what about, I mean, do you want some sort of like first violation and then if you don't address it, a different number?
It's gonna be kind of.
Yeah. We can, I think the most important thing that we need to do right now is just amend the fee schedule, so it's pointing to the right section of code,
Let's do that.
but then we can plug in a number into the fee schedule
Reorg,
separately.
reorg.
Yeah. So I move that we amend the fee schedule.
Second.
All in favor?
Um,
I move the resolution for bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And planning board liaison update?
Yeah, just a couple of items, but lengthy meeting. The first item of note is the special use permit for a dispensary at the Stewards that was discussed. There's interest in getting a traffic study done among the planning board so that we can figure out ins and exits at that particular address. The other 145 North Chestnut was discussed, special use permit for commercial multi-use. That's going to move on to, I believe, secret review will begin at the next meeting for that project. And the other ones, oh yes, 184 Main Street, Moxie Cupcake location for a hotel. That was under discussion. The architect was there, the applicants themselves, a lot of discussion about sidewalk, about parking in the area, and that's going to continue on to the next meeting.
Is that the same hotel plan?
Yes,
that was left?
essentially, but they've done a lot of changes to the design and to the number of rooms, right? As I recall.
They added 2 rooms
Right. They've added a couple rooms.
and they made the restaurant 75 seats instead of 100.
Okay, any ZBA update? Okay, anything else, village board, or should
I
we?
circulated another resolution. It'll be moot by the time the next meeting happens, so at least I'll shout it out, but it was about, and I didn't realize, because like, I don't know, I guess you look at my tabs, they're too much open, that it didn't wind up on the agenda, but it's calling upon the state legislature to pass the LLC Transparency Act of 2023. And you know, both houses are basically advancing this bill. I don't know.
We can- we still have some resolution on the 15th.
I mean, yeah, but then
It'll
it
be
won't,
done.
they'll be done, so it'll be like, oh, we wish you did this. Yeah. Whatever you think we should do. Look into it.
Do you think it has a chance of?
Well, I think so. So this is a bill that I know our assembly member, it's her top priority for like the end, like post-budget part of session. And, since I attended her, like public budget presentation with a lot of members of New Paltz there, which was great. I really looked into it. I was like, ooh, this could use a little lifting up. Since then, the Senate has put forth like the same as bill and whatnot. So it is gaining traction in the past.
Who's
few
carrying
weeks.
it in the Senate?
In the Senate, Senator Brisport, Senator Summer Brooks, Cordell Clear, Liz Kruger, and then co-sponsors are Senator May, Senator Myrie, Senator Ramos, Senator Rivera, Senator Ryan, Senator Salazar, and Senator Weber, who notably is Republican. So the bit of movement it's making is making me feel like with a little bit more nudging from all around the community, kind of like what our assembly member was mentioning, like community at large of the state could help. Let me just summarize it by reading the bill, the resolution I wrote, and then at least that gets it out there. Cool. So it's called the LLC Transparency Act. On the assembly side, it's A3484A. And the Senate bill is S995B. And let me get back to it. And so basically, whereas the LLC Transparency Act of 2023 would require the disclosure of beneficial owners when organizing or registering an LLC in New York State. It does not prohibit LLCs or change their legal structure in any way. Whereas it's important to disclose the beneficial owner and not just the legal owner, because LLCs often have an owner on paper who's acting on behalf of a beneficial owner who actually profits from or controls an interest in the corporation. Whereas unlike some existing laws that were previously passed and have been unsuccessful at holding LLCs accountable, this particular bill requires beneficial owners to be published in a public searchable database. And it also creates a waiver for those who are justified in needing privacy, such as whistleblowers, participants of the state's address confidentiality program. And whereas New York Focus had reported in May 2022 that LLCs still donate significant amounts to candidates for state office, with numerous LLCs exceeding the $5,000 contribution limit. And one in that study had donated about $40,000 to candidates in a single year. Yeah, because because of weak enforcement by the Board of Elections, many LLCs, and because of this whole, the beneficiaries are hidden. Many LLCs making political contributions have not disclosed their owners as required by a change to the law from 2019. Whereas the privilege of anonymity afforded to corporations has not only facilitated money laundering, tax evasion, organized crime, illegal campaign contributions, labor violations, and other forms of corruption, it's also played a key role in exacerbating the housing crisis statewide. According to a 2020 study done by Bard professor Kwame Holmes and his students, LLCs owned 87 properties in Midtown Kingston, 10 of which shared names with corporate landlords operating in states all across the country. And whereas anonymity and protection from personal liability among landlords have resulted in a well-documented phenomenon known as the LLC effect, where the number of LLC landlords in a neighborhood is proportional to neglect and code violations. When trying to subject LLCs to code enforcement, local governments are subjected to lengthy and disadvantaged court processes. So why even go there? Whereas knowing who your landlord is and being able to reach them is a matter of public safety and should be a basic tenant right. And so it would be resolved. The Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees commends the state legislature for taking this issue on, for Assembly member for being a co-sponsor, and I had in it urges the state Senate to advance the same as bill without delay, but they just did that. Got it through a couple committees already. And so that's basically that. Yeah, thought that was really interesting. I don't do it justice in the presentation that Assemblymember Shrestha shared with us, but I was like, wow, that could actually solve a couple of things that sometimes I wish the rental registry would address, but doesn't always, because even with our awesome tools that we have here, I still feel very unequipped sometimes with helping a tenant find all the people that are actually dealing, like benefiting from them paying rent and like have some sort of ownership in their property when it comes down to like a big problem and there's unresponsiveness happening with like whoever the designated property manager might be.
So an LLC is, it could be like one of our, for example, here in New Paltz, one of the bigger apartment complexes, but it also could be a smaller, smaller group of folks who own a building or a couple of buildings who operate under an LLC.
Or it could be just one person
Yeah.
because they're doing it because if there's an incident, they don't want to get sued and lose everything that they have personally.
Yeah.
Three of my neighbors formed an LLC to buy one of the plots in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons for the LLCs, you know, and this wouldn't change that protection, but, you know, it would list those who benefit from it.
I hear that, I just worry that some of the language makes it seem that all LLCs are bad. And
Yeah, if it's just a transparency thing, it should just be a transparency thing.
well, definitely like check out the bill, you know, hopefully not that anyone's watching, but people watch out for the fact, they'll learn more about it and like look it up and stuff.
Because isn't the, I tried to Google it a little bit and like there's federal regulation, right? But that's more about law enforcement,
Yeah. Yeah, and so, you know,
less about just transparency and public disclosure, because that database would not be publicly available. It's just so like if
Yeah.
law enforcement felt they needed to understand who underlying owners are.
I wonder, maybe I can Google it myself, but what's the reason for this position that LLCs enjoy? What was it? Where did that come from?
no idea, you know, like,
Well, I think they're primarily used to protect individuals so that so like, if you know, own a commercial property and there's a slip and fall, then the insurance policy for that property that's owned by the LLC, they're responsible as opposed to them going after you personally. That's, I think, why they exist.
Corporation, so I think.
Right, it limits liability. It's in the name.
So it was a matter of just, I understand, real protection.
But I think you're asking about the history of like, okay, well, that seems perfectly reasonable, but how come you can't look under the hood and see who the partners are?
yeah, and that's the thing that, to me, I'm like, yeah, why can't you? You know, you should be able to figure this out and track it down and all that. And I don't know, I thought that, you know, Professor Holmes' study he did at Bard was really just like interesting to look into. I didn't link it, but I can find that and share that later on with everyone. Stole it from Twitter.
I feel like, you know, if we do, if you know, if we were to sign on to a resolution like this, I think it should just be like, transparency is good. We support transparency.
Cool. Yeah, I mean,
Maybe a letter instead of resolution.
But to Alex's point though, like if the, you know, the representatives in Albany are considering this, that the clock is ticking.
so, I mean, I would be cool with like, here, I'm gonna go to suggested, like making it short and sweet. You know, ending with the whereas, like New York Focus reported about the campaign contributions. And then going to resolved and then, like, just say like, we commend this issue on, and urge passage without delay in the name of transparency for all.
Go back up and see what else
Yeah.
is there.
So then just keeping the first four whereases.
I just, the fourth one, can you help me understand how that has to do with, like,
Oh, yeah. So because we don't have any way to know all the people who benefit, who are beneficiaries in an LLC, you wind up with different, when you add it all up, it's like one LLC wound up donating $40,000 to candidates, but not necessarily with the same name, if that makes sense.
Through the individual.
Yeah.
But how does that protect tenants? Isn't that our goal? I'm confused.
Well, the goal is transparency, and one of the main goals of this that our assembly member was really passionate about, why she's excited about this bill, is because of the tenant protections. But if we want to take out all those, you know, landlord issues and stuff and just kind of leave it at the transparency issue, I think that's fine too, because that's not the only point, you know, it's I thought those links about like campaign contributions were interesting, kind of showed that,
That transparency there. That's
yeah,
another way that transparency is
a very
useful.
real way. That's like kind of like a very Zephyr teach out way of looking at it. And also I thought it was interesting because there was this law from 2019 that passed in the state that was just like political contributions are supposed to be disclosed by the owners of LLCs, and like that just
It doesn't
doesn't
have enough
seem,
teeth.
it doesn't have
And
teeth, it's not
yeah.
happening, because it's like people can,
Closes a loophole.
yeah, and there's like a lot of like Venn diagram stuff that happens with these LLCs. Like there's the overlap where it's like, you know, somebody could be in a couple different LLCs, and all those LLCs could just be them. But some of them could also have beneficiaries that are, you know, sharing Venn diagrams with others, and their powers combined, they could own a whole neighborhood or exceed campaign contributions by tens of thousands, you know, and money laundering and tax evasion, all that stuff.
I guess I'm just trying to understand. Sorry, my head's a lot. So we want tenants to be able to know who their landlord is. So if they have a problem, because we talked about that, and that I
That's a
think
part of it.
is
That's a piece of it. It's
That's-
not just for them.
okay. That's the piece I like.
Well, the transparency, the point is that the transparency is to benefit all kinds of things. And that's just one of the things,
Yeah.
you know, that's one way that it's helpful. But it's not the only way.
It's like, it's a really like, kind of like, it's the kind of bill that usually flies under the radar, you know, and whatnot. And in this case, it's like the time is ticking for them to get some things done, and if it flies under the radar, you know, it is weird. I don't know. Like, I'm not very familiar with the world of LLCs myself.
I like it. I like the fact that it, you know, enables whoever needs to find out
Yeah.
who a beneficiary of an LLC is for whatever reason, whether it's because they're looking to find out if somebody is evading taxes, or to see who owns a building, or is trying to own several buildings in different names, or is contributing too much to campaign. There's numerous ways. And I appreciate all of them, because all of them, you know, anything that benefits from transparency, like that's just a good thing in general. You like to do things, Sandra, you know.
So what are the parts that you put in suggested deleted? What are they
Oh, yeah.
saying?
So replace, and then here, I can accept it and then, you know, reverse if we want. So if we want to take out the landlord parts and stuff and just like kind of leave it general about transparency, then
You have the whereas right before the resolved in the original, I
Mhm.
liked. It was knowing who your landlord is. It was knowing who your landlord is, being able to reach them as a matter of public safety.
Yeah, that's fine.
okay.
But there's nothing like inherently bad about LLCs as long as you know who the members are.
Exactly.
So how about, whereas the privilege of anonymity offered to corporations has not only facilitated money laundering, tax evasion, organized crime, illegal campaign contributions, labor violations, and other forms of corruption, it's also played a key role in exacerbating the housing crisis, and then just and then not even doing whereas, knowing who your landlord is and being able to reach them is a matter of public safety and should be a basic tenant right, and going to resolved.
I don't know about that.
You don't know about
'Cause I
that?
don't know that. That's kind of like,
It just, yeah. What if it's
that
just,
might be true, but I don't know
Whereas
that I'm
knowing
gonna
who
hang
your
my hat.
landlord is and being able to reach them is a matter of public safety.
That's easy.
Short and sweet.
Okay,
and what about the whereas before that? The focus report, which is,
yeah. How do you guys feel about that?
I'm fine.
I like keeping that in there because like the point that like they tried to fix some of these problems in like the 2019, super majority legislature. And since then, there's been reports, that I link in there that didn't work. So that's one reason why the legislature, it was Assemblymember Emily Gallagher, who actually put it forth in the first place. Like the reason why it's coming up now is because like there was a law that was passed and it didn't quite do the thing that they had hoped. And there's a week left to maybe make some substantial change in this realm.
I hear
Before
you.
we lead into the next couple major campaign cycles.
I hear you, and I think, I mean, I don't disagree that some LLCs have been involved in unsavory behavior, but there's also probably LLCs who have done great things. So it just, I don't know, it has a little, I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. Does it drive home the point? Is it needed to drive home the point?
I feel like it does help drive it home.
Up to you all.
I'll go with the majority.
We could cut it out.
It'd be interesting to put in a resolution like this, almost like just like a basic definition, kind of like what we were discussing, like what at its core, what does an LLC accomplish?
Yeah.
Like, what is an LLC? Like, if that's all it is, that's fine. But when they're used, who's directing them, it's different. This is kind of a interesting conversation. I don't know if it's gonna make or break this resolution or whether it gets considered in Albany.
I do know that the assembly member would appreciate having any municipalities nudge stuff. I know the county legislature didn't have enough time to necessarily like have a resolution move through all the different chambers and whatnot. But they're trying, or Phil is trying, legislator.
What do you think, Michelle? How are you feeling now?
As is, it's a no. for me.
Okay, do you want to take that?
Is there
Fourth
anything
whereas
to
out?
delete that would make it a yes?
Fourth, whereas
The New York Focuses report?
I don't want to discount it, and I understand why it's there, but it just, for me, casts it's one-sided, where it takes away from the point and the main focus of what is trying to be accomplished.
Right, because
Let's take it out.
right, I don't think we want to suggest that LLC is inherently bad. If anything, it should just be like, it's just a neutral.
This is an example.
Legal protection, that's all it is.
I know I sent this to you guys at some crazy hour last week. So it's an example of a resolution that doesn't exist out there in the world. And I was throwing everything I know on the topic in there. Let's get rid of that.
The second, whereas the language because LLCs often have an owner on paper who is acting on behalf of a beneficial owner who actually profits from or controls an interest in the corporation. I don't know, can we,
I think actually was the only word in there that's like, Alex,
Mhm.
the rest of it is.
Like it's
straight up the
suggesting
law.
something, it's suggesting something nefarious.
Yeah, okay, we can get rid of the actually, yeah. Is that good?
Yeah.
This is nice and
maybe,
short and
maybe
sweet.
get rid of the not just the beneficial owner and the legal owner. In the first part.
Well, it is just the legal owner that's disclosed now
Right.
and not
Maybe
merely.
it's important to also disclose the beneficial owner along with the legal owner.
Okay.
I know the word just is always feels defensive, so I just wanted to remove that.
Thank you. All right.
Um,
How are you all feeling?
Fire.
Yeah. Can I move to?
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So in that, whereas unlike, the bill requires, I would add legal and beneficial owners. Or am I missing a point that may have been made?
Wait, where is that?
Where you say this LLC transparency bill requires beneficial owners to be published. Don't you also want to include the bill requires legal and beneficial owners to be published in public searchable database?
Yeah. Yeah. Good catch.
Mhm.
beneficial owner who profits from, is that just like sort of the definition of what we feel beneficial owner
You
is?
can get rid of who profits from, just say beneficial owner.
Okay.
Well, if we get rid of who profits from, we also have to, I think, or controls an interest, because those were the two examples I found of what beneficial owners might do. So we'd have to get rid of them both if we get rid of one.
But what about an LLC who's unsavory and doesn't profit?
What?
I don't know. What
Well,
if they're breaking even? Does it like,
Or they're just using it to make campaign contributions without knowing who they are, right?
well, that's why it's not, this is what it is, but it's explaining kind of a little bit about what the beneficial owner, why they need to be lumped in with the legal owner too, because they could also profit from or control an interest within
I
it.
thought it was just a way to hide who's
Yeah,
making the donation, so there's no like proper
Well, we could
involved at
do-
all.
we can just get rid of that whole thing then, who's acting on behalf of a beneficial owner.
I like that.
What did you say, underlying instead of beneficial?
Because that's the term the law's taking on. I don't know, I didn't see underlying anywhere in it.
Well, I think
But I also
related
don't
to the
understand.
campaign contribution, right, there's no beneficial. Right, the only reason they're doing it that way is they're dumping money into a LLC and they're making a campaign contribution just to hide their identity. The LLC doesn't benefit.
Yeah, but it's this, the law is the list of beneficial owners.
Okay,
Like, if we say other words,
sure, no problem. Use the words that's in the law.
yeah. All right, do you all feel cool about me?
Alex, in the first whereas, New York State has an S, so I just to grab.
Oh, yeah. All right, so, motion to pass this resolution calling upon the state legislature to pass the LLC Transparency Act of 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks so much for dealing with this last minute. Sorry, I didn't catch that it wasn't on the thing. Send it off to our electeds. I know Sarah Hannah will be excited. Thank you.
That's it, right? So we can adjourn?
Yeah,
To adjourn.
second.
Everybody second that.